Hey everyone, we're gonna do a Q&A today. I haven't done one of these in a little while. But there were two questions. One came from, well, I've gotten this question a few times, but what prompted this is it came from someone, a client in one of my groups in my Strong Runner Academy program. And I thought it was a super good question. This particular client has been like in eating disorder recovery, both like, inpatient, and just kind of like maintaining that ongoing recovery and, just being active in her recovery, even though she is like autonomous and home and doing um, all the training she wants to do. And I thought it was such a good question. And that question is I'm trying to detach myself from goals related to weight, goals related to like pace or a time on the clock when it comes to like a race. And what are good goals? Like, what are some options essentially? Because she's just like, I have only ever really set these types of goals. And wants to wrap her head around, yeah, like the abstract idea of like you can have goals outside of these things. And I talk about this with clients all the time. I have clients, that I train, and we do set time goals a lot, right? Like I have clients, their time goal is to break 3 hours in the marathon. Their goal is to Boston qualify. Their goal is to get a PR. Their goal is to break 6 hours in the marathon. Or to get, an official finishing time at a marathon major and like beat the time before the course closes. And I think these time-centric goals are fine to have. I have them too. Like when I go and run races, a lot of the time. I think it's cool to push yourself. I also think taking a step back and recognizing the intention, and the attitude behind having a goal like this is important as a coach. Like, if I don't meet this goal, is my self-worth going to take a hit? Am I going to like become depressed? Is it really going to affect the quality of life or my attitude about myself? I think it's okay to be disappointed and say, ah, shucks, like I missed it. What a bummer. And be sad about it, maybe for like a day, a couple days, to have it sting a little bit. Like that's a very human thing. But I think if we are really letting it predict our future outcomes, and how we're able to or to not move forward from it, that's when it becomes a problem. If you're having like panic attacks on course, if you're falling short of your goals or you're just getting anxious, like this is cause to pause for sure. And when I coach these clients and myself too, and when I have been coached, like if I do have a time goal, I always am setting other goals too that I am trying to hold as equally as important to me or even more important to me than or as the time goal. So, for example, when I ran my first Boston Marathon, it was a big deal. It took me a lot to get there. I had to qualify several times and get those times rejected by the BAA because of the buffer that you need to get in. It took me several years. It took me like a global pandemic, injuries. And so by the time I got to Boston, I was like, I just want to show up to this race as strong as possible, feeling as confident in myself as possible so that I can go have like a fun experience. I want to take in the crowds. I want to take in the course. I want to take in all the iconic moments, the history, and I want to be able to finish the race strong with a smile on my face. Like that was my main goal. Because I also showed up to that training cycle in like very good shape. I also wanted to be able to, again, show up to the start line strong and do the training that I was capable of doing. But I really didn't want to put a time goal on the day. And I remember even with my coach, like the day before the race, I was like, so pace strategy? Like, we haven't really, like, you've given me marathon effort and I've run what I think that is, but she never gave me like pace efforts, because we were very communicative about like, that's just not what I want to focus on. And I ended up with a PR that day and meeting all those other goals. And the PR was like the cherry on top. Like if I had had that exact same day and ran like in terms of how it felt, and ran 30 minutes slower, like I think I would have been just as excited like at the finish line. Like I just wanted to have a good experience because it was so hard to get there. I didn't want to show up and be like, injured or burnt out or just like dreading the day or not able to take in, the whole point of me wanting to be there, which was to enjoy the race. I didn't want that. So I kind of had that as my pinnacle and focus during training. Like if I was feeling off or something was feeling hard, I was like, all right, well, what's going to help me feel my best? Not necessarily perform my best. Like I don't want a PR or bust situation. So I really think it's okay to have both. And I think it's also okay to say, you know what? Because I've done this too. Time goals are not good for me right now. Like I am not going to be in the best shape ever when I show up to every single race. The more running, fitness, experience, mileage you just have under your belt, the more you know, okay, not every time I race is going to be a PR because like I can only squeeze like so much out of myself, right? And aging is a thing. Yes, it's a number and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to mean that you're automatically going to be slow because you're a certain age or that you're going to achieve X performance lesser because you're a certain age, but it happens to us, right? Like we're not always going to be able to PR. And that sucks. That's hard for a lot of runners, especially if you've only ever really attached like a time goal to your focus. So it can also be okay to show up with absolutely no time goal and saying, all right, I want to do XYZ instead. And that's the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about in this episode. Because I think this is super important. And I've taken away from like training for a PR too, so that I can regain my love for the sport after burnout, so that I can focus on other aspects of my life. So I can focus on my health, my mental health, other hobbies, my business, postpartum, pregnancy. For a lot of people, there's going to be times where like you're not just steam train rolling forward, like you're taking a step back so that you can focus on other things and stay happy as a person or work through something bad that's happening in your life, something challenging. So the cool thing about running is it can always be there for you when you want to return to it or when you're wanting to use it to maybe support your mental health. I have an episode called Running is My Therapy Until It's Not. So we also shouldn't only be using running to support our mental health and our overall health, but you know what I mean. So goals outside of pace, time, etc. Or we could also say outside of like obsessing over weight, because this is a really big focus for this client who asked the question as well. I think it's really fun to have a fueling related goal and not like a restrictive one, but like can I follow through with the fueling plan that, I set for myself or me and my sports dietitian set for me based off of evidence, based off of what I practiced in training? Like, can I implement this? And I think this is a really good, but also challenging goal for a lot of people. I don't feel like I've run 9 marathons at the time of recording this episode. I mean, I feel like I nailed my fuel plan probably the last like 4, like maybe 5. I did pretty good at Chicago when I did that in 2019, but definitely not all of them. And I'm a sports dietitian who talks about this all day until I'm blue in the face for a living. Like, it's not easy to perfectly implement a fueling plan. I wish more people like gave themselves some grace with this. I think a lot of the times we're maybe ignorant and we are like, we just don't know we're not meeting like what we probably should be meeting for nutrition standards. And then once we know what we should be doing, we're like almost too hypercritical of ourselves. We're like, oh my God, if I don't do it perfect, I'm a failure. So I think having like a goal of how can I practice getting my fueling strategy a little bit better, a little bit closer to where it should be, even if it's not right on the nose in training. And how can I replicate that best of my ability and execute really well on race day, like in a challenging environment? I think that's a fantastic goal. And a lot of the clients, most of the clients that we're working with, like they're really wanting to work on this. And it can be challenging sometimes if that's your goal. And then you also have a PR goal. And then you also have all these other goals too. Like it's hard to make it all come together perfectly on race day. So if this is like your only goal, that's fantastic, is what I'm trying to say. Like it's not easy. It's not a given to just do this. Um, Going into a race knowing that you carb loaded well, that could be another, goal of yours. Like, oh, I've never, been able to do this in the past. I've had to slowly inch my way up over the course of several training cycles. And I'm finally able to get to the point where I'm within recommended sports nutrition, evidence-based reference ranges. How can I do it a little bit better than I did last time? Or how can I implement it even though it makes me uncomfortable? That can be a really great goal. You can have a goal to also go into a race with like good micronutrient status or like good blood work. I think this can be a slippery slope because people get really hyper fixated on blood work. And blood work, don't get me wrong, is like a really great biomarker, essentially. It's good data to assess the status of your overall health. But again, I look at blood work all day for a living. I work with, hundreds, probably thousands actually at this point of humans over the course of my career of about a decade. And it's good to look at blood work, but we have to understand that blood work's a moving target. It's like your health is a moving target. You're not just like, I achieved it and now I don't have to think about it anymore. Like you're a human in an environment. You can only control certain aspects of your life, of that environment, and of your health, your genetics. Like shit happens essentially to people, even if they're super health conscious and they're trying super hard. So I think looking at blood work from like a how can I go into this race with like really good micronutrient status standing? If that's been like an issue for you in the past, maybe you've had low ferritin, low vitamin D, maybe you've been anemic, maybe you were diagnosed with celiac disease and you're trying to like replenish a lot of different micronutrients. I think that can be a good goal as well because it does help you show up often on the start line feeling better, more confident. You could also have a goal of I want to try and break some food rules during this training cycle or during this off season. During this off season, I want to make a goal to try and break one food rule per week. I have clients do this all the time. Make a list of your food rules. All right, that's what we're working with. Like we're going to start chipping away at that. Just to list a couple that I've heard, like people have food rules around eating out, around only allowing themselves to get this at a cafe versus the bakery muffin that they actually want. Or they feel like they need to order black coffee instead of the coffee drink, like the latte that they actually want. Or they can only have a certain amount of fruit in a day, or they can only have so much peanut butter in a day, or only this type of food this many days a week, or they can only eat out this many days a week. And these rules, a lot of the times, are harming us. So, especially like on the mental health standpoint, and therefore probably the physical health one. So, making a point to start breaking some of these can be a really good goal too. And that's something that I worked on with the client who asked this question. Um, Try new things in general. This client was working on this as well. This could be traveling if that's something that made you uncomfortable. Like exposure to things that you want to do but make you uncomfortable. Eating out at a different restaurant, trying a different type of food. If you're like, I've never had ramen before, but I want to try it, but I've always been scared to try it because it doesn't fit into my like, performance plate template, or it's not something I can log in my calorie tracker. I encourage you to go try it. And like just try it without strings attached. So that you can fully immerse yourself in being present for that experience. So trying new things. Maybe it's a new hobby too. Like this has nothing to do with running, but like maybe you're like, I want to try making a sourdough starter or playing an instrument or doing a certain craft or photography or growing a garden. Like there's a lot of other hobbies too that you can intentionally try to say, okay, during this training cycle, I'm trying to remove the focus from like performance or time, or I'm trying to remove my focus from food or weight. So I'm going to intentionally make sure that I'm incorporating working on this different hobby, a couple hours a week, or a couple minutes a day, even if I'm bad at it. Okay. Because being bad at something is very normal. We all start off as beginners when we try something new. We could also celebrate, again, wanting to show up to a race maybe like injury free, or having had a training cycle where you had to take the least amount of days off because of injury. That could be a big thing for people too, especially if that's plagued you in the past. I know I certainly have a lot of injury anxiety that I have worked through with both my PT and my therapist. So I think this is a really great goal too. I remember showing up to my first postpartum marathon, which was Boston 2025. I was like, that training cycle had some ups and downs. It was a bit of a roller coaster because of like XYZ things, but I was like, but you know what? That's the healthiest training cycle my hamstring has ever had, which has plagued me with issues in the past because I basically injured it and did everything wrong to try to fix it by myself. And then once I figured out that I needed a sports PT and the right sports PT and the right strength training plan, all was fixed. It's still something I manage though, because it was a chronic issue. So I get it, is what I'm trying to say. Is it's cool to be able to show up to a race and say, you know what? I have no idea what time I'm going to run. I didn't, for that particular race. I just, again, was trying to do my best in training, but didn't really have a time goal. And I actually am showing up not super dinged up, like feeling healthy. That's really cool to celebrate. You could have a strength goal. Maybe that new hobby or that new training tactic you're trying to try is incorporating strength training or just taking a season to focus more on that. I think it can be good to have some performance related goals within a different sport sometimes so that it takes the focus off of running. But again, slippery slope. We don't want to get too obsessive because then you just basically are focusing the same issue in a different place. But that can be a great thing to think about. I love when people have like a process oriented goal for like their pace plan. So maybe instead of focusing on, I need to run a sub, 4.5 hour marathon, you focus on, all right, I'm going to try really hard to negative split the race, which means the first 5K, I have to actually run slower than marathon pace. And then, I have to be really confident, calm, cool, and collected through this point in the race so that I can finish really strong. I think focusing on process is helpful because it also just helps take the pressure off of an outcome. And a lot of the times you might get an outcome that you're really psyched about because you didn't put pressure on yourself. Done that a bunch of times. I've gone into a lot of half marathons since having my first baby. Basically with I didn't really do organized speed work for this. I just did the bare basics, in my opinion, type of training cycle. But I'm just going to show up on race day and run off feel and have a good time and try to finish strong. And really surprised myself. So I think sometimes too, if you're in a funk, that can be a really fun way to go about a race. Or maybe you show up and you're like, I'm going to run off feel and I'm not going to wear a watch, or I'm going to cover my watch with duct tape, or I'm going to put my watch in a pocket, or I'm just going to try not to look at it. That can be really cool if you've not done that before. Highly, highly recommend. And it also just makes you a better runner, in my opinion. You could also have the goal of, trying to have a good finish. Like I want my last mile to be my strongest. Like I want to just have a good experience and not push myself until the last mile, because finishing strong is also a good feeling. And it's a good thing to practice and train your body how to do. I also love a good social, related sport goal. Like I want to go to run club once a week during, this training cycle or just during this season of life. For me, I like to do that more in my off seasons because it takes the focus off of a pace or a training plan or a distance goal. And I'm like, I'm just going to show up. It's going to be at 5 or 6 p.m., which is definitely not when I typically like to run because I don't necessarily perform my best. But I'm going to focus on the vibes, and making social connections instead of a performance related goal. Or I want to call my mom once a week on my easy runs, or listen to, if clients are trying to work on this, it's okay, I'm going to pick a run once a week and go run somewhere different, a different route that makes it interesting for me. Or I'm going to plug in an audiobook instead of whatever else I typically listen to. Or I'm going to listen to the Life of a Showgirl album, start to finish. Just doing something different than you typically do, or something I like to do a lot, which is like sneaky training, but it also makes type A brains a little bit less structured. Is okay, I'm going to have you go run a 2 mile warm up, and then I'm going to have you do this like weird, cool, really fun stadium workout at your local track or stadium, or maybe you can go to a trail, or you can go to a place with stairs or a parking garage if it's safe. And we can do this weird workout there where you're going to do some stairs, you're going to do some hills, you're going to do some sprints, you're going to do some drills, you're going to do some push ups, some jump squats, like some random stuff. And then you're going to run home. And that can break it up, but actually be really good sneaky training too. I also love those types of workouts. Or you're going to go out for a run, but every mile you're going to stop and do some push-ups or some jump squats. Again, sneaky training, but helps break it up for people. So these are just a couple ideas that I have that I hope you go check out and implement. And if you are working with a coach who or you're just following a training plan or like an AI program that tends to be very focused on time, on speed, on performance, I highly recommend you either have this conversation with your coach, like, hey, can we, and if it's a good coach, they'll respond well to it. Again, they can't necessarily always read your mind. So make sure you have this conversation with them. I know I certainly have with my coaches in the past, like, hey, I just need to take the focus off of pace. I just want to show up to this marathon feeling awesome. Like, I want you to push me in training, but like, I don't necessarily want you to say, 8-minute pace. I want you to just say marathon effort. And like, I'll do my best to figure out what that means because that's a skill I'm trying to work on. Those types of conversations are so important and impactful. So make sure you're having those with that coach. And if they're like, no, I just produce like fast runners, like I don't care about you as a person, essentially, or they're not really following through with that plan, you can always explore the idea of hiring a different coach or joining a different program that's structured differently. If you do need a program to support the type of mindset goals that we're talking about today. Again, the client who asked this, I don't give a training plan to, but I'm kind of helping coach her through this from a nutrition and lifestyle perspective that's absolutely applying to her training. And I can certainly give her training like advice, even if I'm not giving her a custom plan. Check out my Strong Runner Academy group coaching program. At the time of recording this, my next one will be in the summer, in July of 2026. And that will be the last one for this year, just because I am expecting a baby in the fall and going on maternity leave. But we'll be back with those next year in 2027. But if you do want the opportunity to work with me on those goals this year, make sure you check that out. It'll be linked in the show notes. This program, we cover fueling, mindset around nutrition. I've had a ton of clients come through this program who have been through eating disorder recovery before, and their therapist, doctor, ED, dietitian, whomever is on their team has cleared them to go through this program if they're thinking it's going to be the right fit. And I'm always happy to have a conversation about that as well. But it can be really powerful to join a group of like-minded individuals who are trying to kind of like break down barriers similar to you, even if people have slightly different goals. I find the group aspect to be incredibly effective, which is why I've been running these for the past 5 years. So you can check that out, the link in the show notes. And I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next one.